Absolutely delightful to be able to come and talk to you all about our research. Thank you so much. My name's Iona Alexander and my colleague Ruby Warden is here. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what we at Circadian Therapeutics are doing. We're developing diagnostics and products to treat diseases associated with circadian rhythm disruption. And Ruby is running the research side of things. So at the end, when I've finished, she'll tell you how you might get involved and be able to answer any questions about the sort of nuts and bolts of participating. So our work at Circadian Therapeutics is in partnership with the Blind Veterans UK. And our current research is aimed at understanding sleep and daily, that's circadian rhythm disruption that's experienced by individuals who are living with visual impairment. So in this talk, we're going to look at sleep, what drives our sleep-wake rhythm, and of course, other such biological rhythms in our bodies, so that our sleep occurs at the right time, i.e. at night, and the sorts of things that may affect our sleep, including our health and well-being. And I will also talk about the role of the eye in this. Sleep refreshes and recharges our mind and body. And good sleep helps our concentration, our attention, our decision-making, creativity, our mental health, and our well-being. If we don't get enough sleep, we don't function as well, and these abilities can be impaired. We all know, if you're anything like me, that after a bad night's sleep, we're a lot more grumpy, less able to cope with stress, more impulsive, and reach more readily for the stimulants. And that's just after one night. And sleep is just one of the internal rhythms in our bodies that has this 24-hour cycle, this circadian rhythm, circadians from the Latin circa diem. And it's just so important for our well-being. Our bodies are ram-packed with these biological rhythms that oscillate over 24 hours. I've talked about our sleep, but our body temperature, our metabolism, our mood, and our activity all have a regular pattern. In the case of our wake, it means we get up at the same time every day, and for sleep, we go to bed at the same time every day. And the same is so for other biological functions, where they rise during the night and are low during sleep. For example, in the case of the hormone melatonin, it's high at night and it's low during the day, following a regular oscillation. And this occurs day after day, just like clockwork. And we do have a clock in our brains that drive the timing of these rhythms so that they're all ticking to the same beat. But as you know, a clock isn't a clock unless it's set to local time. And for us, our local time is the light-dark cycle of the environment. So let's have a look at the science behind the timing and sleep. So this internal clock, it controls the timing of our internal rhythms, including our wake and sleep. And it has to be set to local time. If it isn't, so if we're left to our own devices, our clocks generally are just longer than 24 hours. And they are reset each day to our local time, which in our case is the light-dark cycle. Sunlight passes through the eye to the internal clock, which sets our internal clocks to the external day, so that our internal timing is synchronized with the external day-night cycle. Another biological process that influences whether we're awake or asleep is sleep pressure. Now, this refers to how long we've been awake. At the start of the day, after a good night's sleep, we're meant to experience low sleep pressure. And as we continue our activities throughout the day, our need to sleep, that is sleep pressure, accumulates. The more we do stuff, the more tired we are. At the end of the day, when it comes to bedtime, we're ready for another good night's sleep, after which sleep pressures reset and we start the whole thing all over again. Now, if you just take a moment to reflect on this, you can think of things that might build up sleep pressure for you during the day. Things such as exercise, activities, and the things that make us human. But there's also things that might disrupt our sleep, like stimulants, outside noise, irregular bedtimes, an uncomfortable bedroom or even an uncomfortable bed, and sometimes too much light. A good daytime schedule, making the most of when we're awake and when the rhythms of our bodies are at our best for our awake functions, and a good nighttime sleep schedule, such as sleep hygiene, all help promote good sleep. So we can see that taken together, it's not only important to sleep, but there are a number of other factors that influence our sleep, including our daytime activities, our habits, as well as our biology, leading to sleep that is not only appropriately timed, but of good quality. Individuals with no eyes at all still sleep in consolidated sleep periods, i.e. 8 hours, for example, and this is because the clock is intact. However, the light input from the environment cannot reach the clock because there is no eye. And so therefore the internal clock will tick to its own beat, which is slightly longer than 24 hours. And subsequently, if we think of the earlier example where individuals go to bed at the same time every day, individuals with no light input to the clock get up later and later and go to bed later and later. This means that individuals experience what we call sleep and circadian rhythm disruption, because the timing of sleep no longer occurs at the same time of day, but slowly drifts through time, leading to a dissociation between biological and environmental time. Therefore, instead of getting up at the same time every day, we awake slightly later each day, eventually cycling through a period where the internal day of our body is the same as the external night. It's desynchronized. There are a number of circumstances when environmental light is absent over a period of 24 hours. For example, if you lived in a cave in complete darkness. Under these circumstances, our internal time is not set to external time. And I'm sure we can all think of other times when the environmental light-dark cycle may be hampered. For example, in prison, or hospital where lights are on all the time, and so forth. There's also travelling to a different time zone, or even shift work. But the example I want to talk about is how blindness may affect that environmental light signal from the eye to the master clock. The eye, as you know, gives us our sense of space. That's being able to see each other and navigate around the world through the rods and cones in the eye. And disease of these leads to visual blindness. There's also diseases of the optic nerves and other, as you know, conditions of the eye that can hamper our vision. But the eye also gives us our sense of time. That's environmental time, through these cells that are part of the non-visual function of the eye. And these are called photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. When these are damaged, light input may be impaired, leading to what I've already described as sleep and circadian rhythm disruption, which I'll call non-24. In the absence of an eye, therefore, you might expect individuals to experience non-24. Not only are the cells used for visual function absent, but so are those used for circadian timing, the photosensitive retinal ganglion cells. So individuals who have their eyes, but do not have light perception, have lost the image forming function of the eye, but not necessarily this non-image forming function of the eye, setting our circadian rhythm. Therefore, although an individual has no light perception, the photosensitive ganglion cells may still be intact, and thus light input via the eye to set the internal clock to the environment is also intact. Individuals would continue to experience an entrained sleep-wake cycle despite being visually blind. Now, we know that eye disease affects the eye differentially. For example, if you think of our entire visual field, you can see everything around you. Retinitis pigmentosa leads to peripheral visual loss, whereas age-related macular degeneration, for example, leads to central visual loss. These are just two examples. RP primarily affects the rods, and AMD primarily affects the cones. But we don't yet know how these circadian timing cells are affected. And what we're currently trying to understand in our research is how different diseases affect those cells involved in circadian biology rather than vision. Because not every individual living with blindness experiences circadian rhythm problems. And we're collaborating with leading scientists at Oxford University, namely Manuel Spitzchen, who's developing new ways of measuring the function of these non-visual cells to give an indication of how circadian blind or susceptible to non-24 we are, and whether different eye disorders affect these cells differently. The type of eye disease then, the amount of light perception or access to light, and the presence of the eye are all important factors in understanding sleep quality and circadian biology in individuals living with vision impairment. The eye is crucial, and therefore individuals living with vision impairment may be more likely to report sleep problems as a result of non-24, and that's an absence of environment light input to the clock. Indeed, evidence does suggest that the blind community are more susceptible to non-24. Skene et al., who are based at Surrey in the 90s, observed that 1% of individuals with light perception experienced non-24. This suggests that even when you have light perception, these photosensitive retinal ganglion cells may be impaired. And they observed that 46%, not 100%, of those with no light perception experience non-24, suggesting, as we've discussed, that despite loss of vision function, these cells are sometimes intact. But in the total absence of the eye, it is 100%, as you might expect. Now, currently there are no treatments, and diagnostics are laborious, which we're really trying to improve. We've already mentioned that there may be other factors that could influence sleep disturbance, and we're currently running a survey to understand more about this. If sleep problems in individuals living with vision impairment were due to circadian rhythm disruption, we would also expect about 50% to experience sleep problems. However, we've discovered it's much more. We measure an individual's sleep quality using sleep questionnaires, and one of those is called the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, or the PSQI, which is a bit less of a mouthful. It's an established tool, and it assesses sleep quality in clinical populations. And our survey of individuals suggests that over 80% of individuals do have sleep disturbances. It's a really super tool. It comprises questions about people's sleep habits and their sleep timings. And these then generate a score from 0 to 21, with anything above 5 being indicative of a clinical disorder. And you can break this up, the data, into bite-sized chunks, if you like. So no sleep disturbances would be individuals that scored below 5. And we found about 16.4% of those experienced poor sleep. Sorry, good sleep, below 5. Now, if you take 6 to 9, we've got 21%. So we're now in the mild sleep disturbance. And then you can say, well, 6 to 12 might be moderate sleep disturbance, and 25% of individuals reported that. And a severe sleep disturbance, that's more than a score of more than 12, and that's 36.9%. So we're able to break that 80+-ish% into mild, moderate, and severe. Now, we've talked about how circadian biology, the clock, but also sleep pressure may influence our sleep-wake cycle. But there are also other factors that influence our sleep quality. And so the survey includes a set of really comprehensive questionnaires to help us home into the things that we would like to capture to understand more about the needs of the community. So it's not just sleep, but also health, well-being, mental health, and also medications. And we're starting to confirm a relationship between sleep quality and a number of other measures, such as sleep hygiene. The harder it is to follow a sleep hygiene schedule, the worse your sleep might be. And the more you're struggling with your mental health, the worse your sleep might be. And we really need to understand this more, and we just need more data. The survey is ongoing, and the more people we have, the better. So there are a number of factors that can contribute to sleep disturbance, and we've already seen that in our data. For example, we've seen about 80% of individuals living with visual impairment report poor sleep. This could be because of circadian rhythm disruption, which leads to poor sleep. And no light perception can lead to circadian rhythm disruption and poor sleep. But we also know that mental health or depression and anxiety can impact our sleep quality, as can physical health concerns. If you've got a sore hip, that pain or pain anywhere in your body might keep waking you up, which can lead to sleep disturbance, which can then impact our mental health. We might feel a bit more depressed or anxious. But we also know that if you have a circadian rhythm disorder, you're more likely to have a physical health condition, which can then impact your sleep and also your mental health. If you're suffering from depression, anxiety, or stress, or another mental health condition, you may not want to go outside or go outdoors. And also you may have pain as a result of light sensitivity, which could reduce your outdoor activity or your exposure to appropriately timed light, which could then impact your circadian rhythm. So there's a number of things to sort of hold in a basket. But what the good news is that that allows a number of different ways to access implications for treatment pathways. So together, we're really hoping to explore the biological reasons, such as non-24, but also other factors associated with our mental, physical, and general health, as well as sleep hygiene, light exposure, and daytime activities that may affect our sleep quality, all of which we're using to provide informed feedback to individuals living with visual impairment, the community, as well as the research community, in order to direct research to suit the needs of the community. As well as considering the factors that influence our sleep quality, we really are paying close attention to the impact of different eye diseases and conditions on sleep quality and the risk of non-24. We're intending to analyse the data in a number of ways, such as the eye disease or condition categories, such as aniridia, retinoblastoma, MAX, diabetic retinopathy, and also there's sections for you to put in your own condition. So if you've got nystagmus with another condition as well, you can input that, and we can separate the data out so that we can really home in specifically. We also assess visual acuity and also visual field loss. So as you can see, we're collecting a large amount of data in order to understand more about the needs of the community, but also thinking about the diversity of the community in terms of the location and the severity of the eye condition. So the survey has 3 parts, of which we've imaginatively named the first part, Part 1. It's the sleep survey, which I've just told you about, and the survey also identifies individuals who are at risk of desynchronization between the internal and environmental time. That's the high risk of non-24. And these individuals are then invited to further research with us. Now, we're able to determine this internal time of the clock, and we invite people to just do that with us. And we imaginatively call this Part 2A, where you're invited to monitor your own circadian time at home. Now, it's very intense, but it is vitally important. The hormone melatonin is a marker of time. It oscillates over 24 hours and rises at night, and we often call it the vampire hormone for that. And it is at low levels during the day. Wonderfully for us, the metabolite of melatonin is found in urine. Therefore, although it's cumbersome, it is relatively straightforward to measure melatonin levels over a period of time. We invite you to collect your urine over 48 hours each week for 4 weeks, and we walk you through the methods and we ensure that you're fully prepared for this at-home laboratory experience. People so far have responded very well, and we're able to make reasonable adjustments that are necessary to make it as easy as possible. We also invite you to keep a diary, as well as wear an activity rest monitor on your wrist. It doesn't tell us exactly what you're doing, we just know when you're active, and when you're not. And the results are amazing. We can generate a concentration curve for melatonin after each week of the sampling. This enables us to see the rise of melatonin, which is about 2 to 3 hours before sleep, and the peak, which typically in someone who's synchronized with the external world would be between 1 and 7 a.m. If an internal clock is not set, this peak will occur outside those times. So when an individual's internal time is in line with the external world, the curves for each week overlap, showing that the rise and peak occur at the same time each week. By contrast, if an individual's internal clock is ticking to its own beat, these curves will not overlap, but rather you might anticipate that a peak would be later and later each week. It takes quite a lot of time and resources for everybody to come up with these results. And wouldn't it just be wonderful if you could pop along to the GP and have a blood test? And amongst other things, that's what the second part of our study, called Part 2B, is about. We're looking for easier ways to determine internal time, as subsequently those individuals that are eligible from Part 2A are then invited to participate further. This involves intense monitoring to develop new methods to detect non-24. And we invite you to come and stay with us at the Blind Veteran UK Centre for 2 nights and associated days. With COVID, this section's currently on hold, but we're still processing for 2A. But I'll tell you about 2B anyway. We complete a number of measures that will give us an insight into other easier ways of determining internal time. For example, one aspect is collecting blood at regular intervals throughout the stay. And this is, as I said before, it would just be incredible if individuals at risk of circadian disruption could pop along to the GP and have a blood test, just like we do for our thyroid or our liver function. Circadian Therapeutics are also developing diagnostics and new treatments to help people who are experiencing this debilitating disorder. And we're working with a number of charities, including yourselves, having this wonderful opportunity to tell you about our research. But we're also working with Moorfields Eye Hospital and the John Radcliffe Hospital Eye Clinics. And we're so grateful for this opportunity to work with them and with you. So my talk, we've explained and explored why we sleep and how sleep timing affects our sleep quality, but other factors that also influence our sleep quality. We've looked at the importance of the eye in circadian timing, and we've touched on new methods being developed to measure photosensitive retinal ganglion cell function in the face of eye disease and conditions. Our sleep and health survey is to provide valuable insight into the sorts of interventions, both behavioural and biological, that would be appropriate for the visually impaired community. It also leads to the opportunity to be involved in further research, developing new methods to detect time, and we're working together to raise awareness about the sorts of things that we can all do in order to improve our sleep quality, as well as understand the needs of the community to provide informed feedback and to guide further research. And so the outcome of this research is to provide informed feedback to healthcare professionals as well about the links between sleep and vision loss, to guide further research to meet the needs of the community. We've got a website which is blindsleepstudy.com, blindsleepstudy.com, which will tell you more about the sorts of work we're doing, as well as some links to some other research. And we would absolutely love if you were able to participate. Ruby is going to tell you a little bit about how you might do that. You can do it over the internet or over the phone. And I tell you something, Ruby is delightful to do it over the phone. So if you wanted to, I would really plug for that, because she's just great to chat to. And it's a good opportunity to be able to talk about things that aren't in the survey that you think we might be good for us to look at. So that's me done. Thank you so much. And I'll hand you over to Ruby. Ruby.
Hi, thank you, Iona. Yeah, so like Iona said, the survey, you can either complete it over the phone with me, or you can do it online as well. Some people prefer to do it over the phone, some people couldn't bear the thought of doing it over the phone. But there's a link you can register your interest. I'll put it into the chat so that people can read it. And I'll send it to you as well, Sue, just so you can send it to anyone that's interested. And you can also call us and leave a message on our answer phone. If you leave your name and your phone number, I'll get back to you normally within about a day. I'll put that in the chat as well and send it to you, Sue. But the phone number is 01865 546 582. And you can also express your interest on our website. If you've got any questions about the survey or any part of the research before you want to get involved, you can just give us a call and I'll call you back, or you can send us an email. All the information is on our website. Yeah, and hopefully, if anyone's interested, well, I look forward to speaking with you on the phone, maybe.
Thanks, Ruby.
Thank you, Ruby, and thank you, Iona. That was just fascinating. I know some people here possibly have already taken part in the initial survey. I'm not sure whether anyone here did, but we did advertise it and promote it quite widely on our social media, because I do know, talking to a lot of people with nystagmus, that sleep issues are sometimes a bit of a challenge for people. So thank you so much. Now, I understand, Iona and Ruby, that you are prepared to take questions. So if anyone has any questions, do please fire away and we will all do our best to reply to them. I have tons myself, but I don't want to leap in if others have them.
Can I ask a question, please?
Please do, Chris. Hello.
Right. This isn't me. This is my husband. He has one eye that hasn't formed at all and one eye that is partially formed. But as far as I can see, he sleeps much better than I do. So does this mean that if you've got one eye that works semi-properly and the other one is completely not formed, that you're getting 50% of the circadian information?
Hi, Chris, that's a great question. Although your husband is sleeping better, you're absolutely right. If you've got one eye or any photosensitive retinal ganglion cells in an eye, then the chances are it might be working, which is absolutely brilliant. Some time ago, one used to remove eyes that were diseased and where you couldn't have any vision at all, because they were worried about all sorts of medical things that could happen, and they would remove the eyes. But now we've understood a lot more about photosensitive retinal ganglion cells, that they don't help us with our actual vision, they now keep them intact. And so your husband may indeed have some photosensitive retinal ganglion cells.
He was actually born with, well, we've never been told, but it's obviously coloboma, total coloboma in one eye.
Yeah.
And the other one is, he's got about 620, that's about 630, no, hang on, he's about 624, with a lot of scarring.
Yeah, the other thing is that light is the main thing that sets our internal rhythm. When I say thing, I mean Zeitgeber. It's from the German, and it sets our clock, basically, the light. But we've also got non-photic ways of setting our clocks. But we're not really sure how in humans, how effective it is. But we do know that if you have a very regular rhythm, regular meal times and keep active during the day, that might be helping. So there may be other ways that your husband may be setting his clock.
Well, I should be telling him about this and getting him to listen to it to see if he'd be interested in joining the research project, because he's much better at this sort of thing than I am, because I don't like doing blood.
Well, the survey doesn't involve any blood, so do get involved, and nor does part 2A, and it
Right.
very many people for 2B, so you could do 2A and bail out.
Yeah, I'll definitely get him to have a listen and see if it's something he'd like to get involved in, because he is quite rare.
Thank you, Chris. The other thing in relation to that is our internal clocks tend to be just faster than 24 hours. But you know what? It may be that his is 24 hours.
Wouldn't say it's quite that good, but it's a lot better than mine is.
Yeah.
And yet I've got two perfectly good working eyes.
And that's the thing, and this is why this research is so important, because it's unpredictable. We can't tell who would have an issue. And as you say, his sleep is better than yours. And there's other factors and all sorts of things that we do need to understand, the different eye conditions and how they affect us. Thanks for your question.
Okay.
Thank you, Chris. Any more questions? Any hands up? Can't see any hands up. I had a question, Iona, if I may. You spoke a lot about something called sleep hygiene, and I just wondered, what does good sleep hygiene look like? Is that a fair question?
It's a very fair question. It's actually one of the questionnaires in our survey, and I'm sure Ruby would be delighted to go through some of the questions if you wanted it sort of in the nuts and bolts of it. So Ruby, tell me if I miss anything out. Good sleep hygiene is something that we might traditionally put children through. So we encourage them to calm down before bedtime. We might suggest that they don't have too much chocolate or sugar before bedtime. We might give them a nice warm bath and they relax, and then we put them to bed, and we try and do that at the same time every day. And that's really sleep hygiene. I'm sure you're all much better than me, but I'm a bit of a scallywag when it comes to the working day. I'll be busy working, I'll come in the evening, I'll try and ram everything in, I'll have a nice cup of coffee outside in the garden, and then wonder why I can't sleep. So it's something that I've had to adopt, and it's certainly helped me with my sleep. Me being a sample size of 1 isn't very relative, but there's the National Sleep Foundation, and they've suggested that sleep hygiene is really great and gives some tips. And there's a really good leaflet on the Sleep and Circadian Neuroscience Institute website, which tells you a bit more about sleep. So avoiding alcohol, avoiding caffeine and stimulants after 4 p.m. Some people think that alcohol helps them sleep, and yes, it's true. People do seem to say that, but what we do know from recording the brain when it's sleeping is it isn't as good a quality. So although you might be asleep and feel you're asleep, your brain's not getting the best chance at doing it. And things like using your bedroom for sleeping. And Ruby, other things have I missed out that you can enlighten us on?
I would say, yeah, the using your bed for just sleeping is really important. Like, I'm terrible for that. I watch television in bed every night before I go to sleep, which is not good for you. Things like, yeah, watching television, eating meals in bed, just kind of sets off that idea that your bed is where you sleep. So maybe when you're in bed, you're feeling a bit more active because you've been doing other things in it as well. And some things like that feeling of when you're lying in bed and you can't get to sleep for ages. Apparently it's good if you get out of bed, go somewhere else, relax for 20 minutes, and then get back into bed, so you're not having that feeling of like, or just like anxious stress, knowing that you can't sleep when you're in bed. So then you start, if you stay in bed for ages while you're feeling like that, your bed can become a place of like stress rather than somewhere where you're feeling really relaxed. So apparently that's a good thing to do. But I think Iona got most of them. It's the regular waking up, regular going to sleep at the same time. Don't have a massive dinner just before you go to bed. Obviously don't drink a coffee when you're in bed, things like that.
So it's quite comprehensive, isn't it? There's lots of room for error, but they're just suggestions. So that's the sleep hygiene. And we ask questions in the survey because, of course, as Ruby and I have given you all of our bad tips, which is terrible for sleep researchers, but it's really important that we have an honest slice, because if we realise that we aren't going to bed at the right time, or we're drinking coffee late, that's a fantastic behavioural change and adjustment that we can make ourselves to help us to improve our sleep without needing to think about medication in that aspect.
Claire, you have a question. You're on mute at the moment, Claire.
Okay, thank you. I always do that. Hi. I don't know whether it's too soon to answer this question. It might be, but I'm just wondering, people with nystagmus, it's very interesting. Obviously, it goes with a lot of eye conditions, but those of us who've just got nystagmus, we probably are getting light into our eyes. And in fact, my impression is always that I'm getting too much light and it's causing me a certain amount of distress. But I just wonder if you could comment on that, whether there's anything to say about that yet.
Thanks, Claire. That's it's really important. We want to understand a lot more about the impacts, as you've rightly said. You've got your eyes and you're getting light input. You've said that it's almost too much. And so if we don't expose ourselves to sunlight, it might have an impact. And that's why in our survey, we don't ask you to go off and sort of expose yourself to light at all, but we're trying to understand a bit more about it. And so if enough people from the nystagmus community take part and help us to understand the data, from what you've said, what would be a really useful way of looking at the data is taking nystagmus as a condition and then saying, okay, how much light exposure on average do individuals get? And how does this compare, and what sort of repercussions and the impact it has? If you don't like going outside, which is absolutely understandable if the light is causing pain, which happens in a lot of conditions, or for other reasons, which we don't know about, that you could put into the survey, then of course that will impact perhaps how active you can be during the day. And so again, that will feed into some informed feedback about, okay, well, going outside and getting outdoor activity, maybe appropriately timed light, we could perhaps understand a bit more about that and apply the research to it, but maybe some indoor exercises might be a bit more encouraged to do, get some indoor exercises intact, and those sorts of things. So it is a bit early, but the more people that participate, then we can break the data up accordingly. And it's so important that we consider our behaviours and how our conditions might influence the way that we can behave or interact. Does that answer your question?
Ish, yes, kind of. I'm wondering now about dark glasses, actually, whether going around in dark glasses whenever you're outside, whether that has an effect or whether it's not quite so. Maybe you just don't know the answers to these yet.
Well, I don't know the answers, but I can help you to perhaps think about it and help us to understand it. So dark glasses, the eye, the cells the light that those cells is particularly interested in is a particular wavelength. As you know, light is made up of a number of wavelengths. So we'll call them short, medium, and long. The short wavelengths is what these cells are interested in. So depending on the colour of your glasses might depend on how much light they're filtering out. And so that's a really interesting point. And if you were going outside and had dark glasses, we might like to know that, mightn't we? Because that's going to help us interpret and understand a bit more about our data.
Thank you.
Absolutely, because we spend our lives advising people with nystagmus to avoid bright light, and particularly parents who aren't aware of the photosensitivity in very young children. We tell them to shade the children's eyes to protect the children's eyes. So there's definitely something there.
And also there's all sorts of conditions, age-related macular degeneration, and ultraviolet light can cause cataracts and everything. And so we're not looking at spending all day outside. There's some research looking at, I think I mentioned, appropriately timed light. And we know in depression in winter, if you're really struggling, that you can have light therapy. And it's in the morning, just for a short period of time. And so it's possible that if we understand more about the needs of the community, and if it's light input, we might be able to say, just give it a go for this period of time, and perhaps have filters on that help it feel less painful, whatever. So I'm dribbling now.
Thanks, Iona. Thank you, Claire. Brilliant question. We have another question about eye movement and sleep, which is one that I'm particularly interested in too, and I'm sure most people with nystagmus would like to hear about that. Toshi, would you like to ask your question?
Yes, can you hear me? Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Right. I may be wrong, but I'm told that with nystagmus, your eyes move during sleep. It doesn't stop moving. Well, if that is true, then how does that affect the sleep patterns?
Thank you, Toshi. I'm going to start off by saying the most comprehensive answer I can give you is I haven't got the faintest idea. I do know a little bit of research that's taken place that does suggest that the impact is a result, it sort of affects our REM sleep, and that there can be issues with the sorts of quality of sleep that we get at night. And as you know, we tumble through 4 stages of sleep and tumble back again over a cycle of 90 minutes. And with nystagmus, as you've said, with the eye movements at night, one might predict that there would be an impact. So although even if you were sleeping appropriately timed, the quality of that sleep might be impaired. And in part 2B of our research, we also invite people and ask them to wear EEG, which are all these tiny little electrical wires over the head, and they wear them constantly from when they arrive to when they leave. And we're monitoring wake and sleep EEG so that we can understand a lot more about the quality of sleep, but also any micro naps or anything that might occur during the day. So I don't know, but hopefully there'll be more research to really help us understand that.
I think we could certainly find you lots of willing participants if you were to look at eye movements in sleep, because that is something that anecdotally people do say that they believe that the eye movements, then maybe become more aware of the eye movements when they're in bed at night and everything else is quiet.
Yeah, Circadian Therapeutics are sort of mainly looking into sort of treatments and things. But what's wonderful about working with you and the charities is we hear that actually eye movements are really important. And so that helps and facilitates us when we're analysing our data and talking to other scientists and to our eye hospital clinicians so that we can help direct future research. And it might be something where we can draw some information from what we do have in order to encourage people to look at this.
Wonderful, thank you. Any more questions? I see Chris has gone and put her wide-brimmed sun hat on to demonstrate. Any more questions? Do we have any hands up? No? You sure? Last chance? Okay. Sandra.
Mine's not a question, actually. I just want to say, I joined this Zoom meeting tonight because I actually work with a small child who has nystagmus and iridia. So I've obviously keen on trying to understand his condition, and it's been very enlightening, especially with the viewpoint that he may not sleep particularly well. So that's something I need to sort of look at. So thank you very much. For me, this has been quite incredible. Thank you for sharing your experiences and your expertise. And that's really all I wanted to say.
Thank you.
Oh, well, that's a lovely thing to say. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
I'm really pleased to hear that some of the talk and also the discussions have been so helpful.
Yes, thank you. It's given me an insight and perhaps other things that we need to look at for him and other questions I need to ask. So, yeah, thank you.
And Iridia UK are really supportive, and we've done a little bit of work with them. And there's sort of quite a drive to be looking at the genes that might be involved in aniridia and how they may also impact the development of the areas that are involved in our circadian timing too.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So fire away with your questions on all fronts, Sandra. We're always here. Nystagmus Network is always here.
Thank you.
To support you.
Can I ask?
Sandy,
Ruby,
please do.
how do you spell aniridia?
Oh, now you're checking. A-N-I-R-I-D-I-A. Someone's spelling than me.
Yes, that's right.
Thank you, Sandra.
Again, I missed that.
I googled it.
A-N-I-R-I-D-I-A.
That's brilliant. Thank you.
And they have days and awareness days as well. They're really, everyone's really friendly.
They are. I can vouch for that. They will be hosting at the end of July, beginning of August, that August Bank Holiday weekend. Aniridia UK will be hosting the European Aniridia Conference, and Nystagmus Network have been asked to present, so I will be there. And as Brian.
I'll tell you something else. Russell Foster, OB, who's also the head of one of the directors of Circadian Therapeutics, but the head of Sleep and Circadian Neuroscience Institute, is, I think, giving a talk.
Ah, brilliant. Okay. So we will make sure everyone has the link for that then. Because I'm sure you won't have anything else to do on Bank Holiday, August Bank Holiday weekend. Wonderful. Any more questions? Well, I have Ruby's phone number. In fact, we'll all have Ruby's phone number soon. So if we have any more questions, we can bombard her with them, can't we? Because
absolutely,
it's all
anytime.
It's all data, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. When you call that phone number as well, it will just go straight to an answer phone. But if you leave your name and number, I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Well, Ruby and Iona, thank you so much for today. It's been such an interesting, I'm not going to say eye-opening talk, that would just be fast. But thank you so much. It's been really great, and we will be encouraging everybody in the Nystagmus community to take part in research in future.
Thank you so much. It's lovely to see you all and meet you, Sue, having chatted to you online.
Well, let's hope we meet in person sometime soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Iona. Thank you, Ruby. That was brilliant.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you very much. Lovely to see you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.